Bytesized.
Welcome to Gaikoku Gamers. I'm Darryl Benson, and good news. So first off, I fixed my microphone issues. Thank you for our viewers who went ahead and pointed out that I had a bit of a problem. I had to go into Windows Control Panel because apparently it was set to 0. So the fact that you guys were hearing me at all is pretty much a miracle. I've also fixed my lighting, so hopefully I don't look as washed out. Either way, thank you so much for sticking with us. So to coincide with my failures of setting this thing up, I decided to go ahead and talk about someone else's failure, and that would be Big Red Button's failure, which is Sonic Boom. And you know, we can sit here and talk about how bad the game is and, you know, the horrible review scores it's been getting. That's kind of well known, and that's pretty much irrelevant. What I really want to talk to you guys today about is just how badly it's doing financially. And maybe it's just the day and age, you know, that we live in, where we're all connected, and, you know, people can look up review scores and hilarious videos showing how broken a game is before it's come out, despite the fact that there was an embargo that was not lifted before the game's release, meaning people couldn't say how much it sucked until the game had come out. Despite all their best efforts, people learned that this game sucked, and the sales figures apparently speak for itself if you really think about it. They sold 110,000 copies. That's it. It's been weeks now. It's actually been a pretty long time, and unless you're selling a game like, you know, Mario Kart, where it's just gonna keep going and going and going for a long period of time, games pretty much fall off the sales end after about 4 weeks or so, and this game is already dead out of the water. The reason why this is such a big problem is because apparently Sonic Boom's budget was $20 million. So if you do the math, the game sold at $49.99, so we're just going to round that up to $50. Even if every single copy took in $50 of pure profit, which is not how it works. I mean, you got shipping costs and, you know, money to give to retailers, etc. But let's just say they took in a whole $50. They would need to sell 400,000 copies in order to go ahead and just break even. That's bad news, man. I know that Big Red Button, this is their premier game, but they might be going defunct because of this, because they're going to be losing a shit ton of cash, along with Sega. That's not terribly surprising. I mean, I think most people would have suspected that it would have sold poorly, maybe not that bad. Then again, it is on the Wii U, and the Wii U doesn't really have the numbers to push out big numbers for third-party sales. I personally think that the game might have been able to at least break even if it had been ported to a bunch of consoles, which, frankly, that's what Sonic should be doing. Sega is a third-party company after all. They're no different than Ubisoft or EA or Activision, and they need to go ahead and put this on more than one console. You know, before, when they've done, you know, console exclusivity, it kind of made sense. You know, the Sonic Colors only came out on the Wii, but the Wii was selling gangbusters, so it makes sense. You know, an exclusive, a third-party exclusive on a very good selling console makes sense. But there's two concrete things that no one can dispute. The Wii U is kind of a disaster sales-wise compared to its competition, both last-gen and current-gen. And it just doesn't push third-party games. Period. I can't think of any third-party game that's sold phenomenally well. And it's ruined really good games. Bayonetta 2, for example, phenomenal game, and it's not selling, and they're probably not going to break even either. But this is the part where it starts going into kind of creepy, scary territory. Sega actually thought that Sonic Boom would sell a lot more than Sonic Lost Worlds. Okay, even graphically, Sonic Lost Worlds is a much better game. And obviously, gameplay-wise, it's a much better, game. I wasn't really personally much of a fan of Lost Worlds. I thought it sucked, but I've suddenly gained newfound appreciation for the game after playing Sonic Boom. But what I can say is this, even if the gameplay wasn't a factor, let's just say they just had no clue that the gameplay was broken beyond belief. Even if they thought it was a decent Sonic game, you had two obvious things going against it. Number one, the characters look completely different. Which, while there are some extremely die-hard Sega fans, much more than me, and I consider myself to be a pretty good Sega fan, there are some, even though there's some really die-hard Sega fans out there defending the character choices, it was definitely polarizing, and most people didn't like it. And even if they thought the character designs were good, they should have been able to foresee that people would not have really been excited about that change. Or at the very least, it might have been divisive. And number two, you had the fact that it really didn't look not even half as good as Lost Worlds. So it's not going to get people excited in the same way that Lost Worlds got people excited, because at least that looked like a next-gen Galaxy game or something like that. It looked really good. So I'm struggling to think that it would have been able to sell, in their eyes, more than Sonic Lost Worlds. Now this is the other problem. Sonic Lost Worlds only sold a little more than 400,000 copies. So basically, if it only did as well as Sonic Lost Worlds, which there's nothing on the table here that's showing that Sonic Boom would have sold more than Lost Worlds. It has worse graphics. It's not being made by Team Sonic, or Sonic Team. It's not even really being made by Sega. It's made by an unproven developer. The gameplay was horrible, and it's correlating with a cartoon, which is, comedy-wise, as bland as the game was. At best, they would have sold just as much as Lost Worlds, and they still would have only been at best at break even. Now, here's the real problem here. This game has been for sale now for at least a couple weeks on Amazon for $25, $29 or so. It fluctuates. And I'm sure other retailers are selling it for far cheaper than that, frankly. So there's a good possibility that at least half of those sales, of those 110,000 units, didn't even pull in $50. And like I said, you also have to pay retailers, you have to pay for shipping, manufacturing. I don't even think that they're anywhere close to even being a quarter of the way to breaking even at this point. And what, I don't know, I guess the whole roundabout to this is look, if you can't make a Sonic game, and you can't pay another developer to make a Sonic game that sells well on a single console, number one, port it to other consoles. Crazy thought, okay? Even Sonic 06 was on more than one console. And I know Sega has this love relationship right now with Nintendo, and that's all hunky-dory. But at the end of the day, that doesn't help. The Wii U isn't doing anything. It's not even doing anything in its home country of Japan. And as popular as the 3DS is doing right now, it's not helping the Wii U at all. So make it multi-plat. And number two, if maybe you kind of drug Sonic through the mud so many times that people just don't have a lot of faith to buy your game on day one without looking at reviews that obviously save them cash because they warn you that it's crap, maybe it's time to wait on that franchise for a little bit. I've heard this from Sonic or Sega executives in the past, and they're like, well, the reason why we're focusing so much on Sonic games is because they sell. Not anymore. I mean, you have so many other franchises. You have Phantasy Star Online 2, which is in Japan, which still isn't released in the United States of America. despite the fact that you've already translated it to English for Hong Kong users, but you IP ban everybody so we can't play the game even though we're trying to pay for it legitimately. Release that game stateside. I'm not saying it's going to sell better than a Sonic game, but it really can't be much worse at this point, so fuck it. You've already made it. It's not like there's a huge strain by porting it over to an American console. You already have it in English, just do it. And then that kind of rolls me into the main thing, which is release your other stuff. You know, I can understand if you're too chicken shit to go ahead and make a new Daytona USA game, or make a new Fighting Vipers game, or Virtual Fighter game, or whatever of the plethora of games that you have, you know, Alex Kidd, and there's so many things that you have that you could literally pull from Crazy Taxi, Space Channel 5. I mean, there's so many new games that you can make sequel-wise. It just hurts the brain. But, you know, I'm not even seeing any support for any next-gen console of the games, the arcade games that you put up previously already for sale. You still haven't ported anything. There's no Crazy Taxi, there's no Daytona USA, there's no Sega Rally, Fighting Vipers, Virtua Fighter 2, Sonic the Fighters, etc., 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 Nights into Dreams. You have all these games which all you have to do is port them to newer hardware. The development is already done. In fact, the development was done back in the 90s, but I digress. Just put it over there. Give yourself some extra income. You don't even have to do anything. And if you really want to be batshit crazy, do two things. Number one, make sequels, which I already said, which would be great, but that'd be crazy because we can only make Sonic games because you're Sega. And two, release the other arcade games. You have hardware like the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 and frankly the PC, which are more than powerful enough to go ahead and have other arcade games from that 90s, late 90s era, like the arcade version of Hydro Thunder, or Daytona USA 2, or any of the other racing games and fighting games that came out. I mean, Rival Schools 2, port that. I mean, Fighting Vipers 2, port that too. There's so many games that you have. Actually, Rival Schools 2 was Capcom, but I digress. My point is, you know, you have all these cool arcade games. You know, I don't know how you do it. Maybe you could sell the Move, but you know, you have like the Jurassic Park: The Lost World. You have there's whole Sega Model 3 and Model 2 games that you have yet to release. Is my point, and it's like just port them. It's not hard, and people have to understand. You know, people are like, oh well, it's because they're hard to emulate on a PC. Yeah, keyboard emulate. But Sega actually has the code, which is how they're able to make Daytona USA run so well on a PS3 or a 360, despite the fact that those consoles are significantly weaker than your consoles at home, or your PC at home, and your PC still can't do it 100%. It's pretty close, but it's still not 100%. It's because Sega has its assets. Sega has the old assets, so it's easier for them to port it to new hardware and not need so much of a hardware boost in order to emulate old hardware. They're not even emulating old hardware, they're just porting the game to new hardware. So all these games are perfectly doable. You know, port Dreamcast games, port Sega Saturn games. And I'm not just talking about Wii Virtual Console, because that's pretty much dead. Even, I mean, not even Nintendo seems to be pushing out much of anything on the Wii U Virtual Console-wise anymore. Do it for all systems. Do it for all, even PC, even PS3 and 360. Do it for all consoles. Just release everything, because those sales will never die. Just like Nintendo can resell Super Mario Bros. 3 80 bajillion times, because those sales will never die, because there's always someone who's willing to go ahead and pick it up and play it. They're classic games, and they're classic for a reason. It's because they're good, and they evoke heartstrings, even if they suck. Emotions from gamers that, you know, remember a time when hardware was a little bit more interesting than a previous gen console with a television screen and in a controller that you had to look down in order to see, not looking away at the action, and two consoles that were so similar it hurt. You know, back in the 90s and 80s, there were significant differences to consoles, and there was legitimate reasons why you would pick one over the other. It's a little boring now, so, you know, hit people in where it hurts, you know? Release the stuff from an era where gamers like me, who are about to be in their 30s, or in their 30s already, sorry about you people who are older, you know, or 40s even, or 50s, you know, like, are already at that point where they just want to relive old stuff without having to do what I did and buy a frickin' arcade machine and have it in my house. It's just common sense. Because, you know, people talk about emulation. I'm going to do a video about this too. People talk about emulation as if it's this horrible thing. Well, you're horrible. You're stealing money away because you're emulating, you know, Virtua Fighter 2. Well, if I buy it at a used game store, the developer's not getting my money anyway. And frankly, prices for used games from that era and previous eras are so high right now, it's ridiculous. It's just some random bloke going ahead and getting money. It's not supporting a developer. So whether I hack it or not, whatever, unless they go ahead and re-release the product. And if Sega's not re-releasing the product, as far as I'm concerned, in my eyes, it's not for sale, which means I can just do whatever the hell I want with your IP. And I don't like doing that. So put it up for sale. Put it up for sale, because you're not getting any money by me buying Jurassic Park: The Lost World, the arcade game. And you're not getting any money whenever someone buys Fighters Mega Mix, you know, on the Sega Saturn from a used game shop instead of on an Xbox One or a PS4. Think about it. Anyway, so that's my thoughts on that. Those are the cold hard facts on why Sonic Boom is failing. And I'm going to keep on it. If I hear anything news-wise about Big Red Button imploding from the poor sales, I will be sure to let you guys know. And frankly, I don't say this often, if really at all, because even if you don't appreciate a developer's game, like if it's not your thing, like I know some people don't like Crash Bandicoot, but you wouldn't want, you know, you wouldn't want the developer to go away. Like, those are people's livelihoods and those people's jobs. This is actually one of those developers that I really would not be sad to go away. They have no pedigree, they've made nothing else, and this is what they make. Bye-bye. So, and that's it. I'm Darryl Benson. This has been another bite-sized episode of Gaikoku Gamers. Go ahead and check out our site. Please go ahead and subscribe. We need more subscribers. We've actually been getting a lot more subscribers in the last couple of weeks, so I really do appreciate that. Please comment. If you have any questions or any suggestions for future videos, please let me know. And until then, I'll see you next time.
Bite-sized.